everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Superannuated Starman. I'm your host, Sean Ryan, and today, as always, I'll be joined by Chris Duerksen and Cory Braucks. In 2023, we're going to be celebrating the 25th or 30th anniversary of several amazing titles that either came out in 1993 or 1998. We've already covered some of them over the last year and a half, and last month we covered Gunstar Heroes, which will celebrate its 30th anniversary in September of this year. We'll be covering our first sports title, NBA Jam. And I'll be using music primarily from the arcade version. However, I might throw in some music from the SNES version for comparison. Just to be very upfront, it's video game sports music, so it's not great. It's not a banger like your Legend of Zelda, your Sonics. It's just not fantastic. So please just bear with me on that.
It's like your ESPN filler music.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And if you hear Chris and he sounds a little different, he's currently recording this in his car. He is taking some time out of his day. He's got some other things going on, but he still wanted to be here with us. And for you, the listener, be sure to stick around to the end of this episode when I announce the winner of our holiday giveaway, where the winner will receive a North American Switch code for Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. Let's take a quick break to hear some of that music, probably from the Super Nintendo version, and then we'll move on to the history of NBA Jam. Though there were multiple publishers and developers for this title over the years, the original arcade port was developed and published by Midway. NBA Jam released in the arcades in North America in April of 1993, and NBA Jam quickly rose in popularity as one of the first basketball games to feature NBA licensed teams and players with their lifelike, digitized likeness. Most players' memories of this game are probably from the home console ports rather than the arcade release. However, most of those ports weren't released until the following year or later. NBA Jam made its way to the Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Game Gear, Master System, Sega Genesis, Sega CD, Sega 32X, Sega Saturn, the Atari Jaguar, and the Sony PlayStation. So this game was ported many, many times.
And iPhone.
So that's a new release, though. This isn't the original port of the 1993 game.
Right.
This game has had sequels because there was an NBA Jam title that came out for the Switch in 2011, I believe.
There was?
I'd have to look it up. If one of you guys can check Google real quick.
NBA Jam on Fire Edition for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
Oh, it did not come out for the...
Yeah.
Did I say Switch?
Yeah, 2011. It was not on Nintendo.
Okay.
There was a 2010 that made it to the Wii, but that's not the On Fire edition.
Okay. If I had said Switch earlier, I meant the Wii.
Yeah.
And so it came out in 2010. I knew that there was one. I just wasn't exactly sure. But the idea for NBA Jam was devised after Midway's previous attempt in the arcade, Total Carnage, because that game failed to meet sales expectations. Mark Chamel wanted to develop a game with wider appeal, and eventually a sports game with digitized graphics was settled upon. The NBA reacted negatively to the concept, feeling that an arcade game was the wrong image for their brand. However, after a second pitch, they were convinced of its potential. There was also a royalty deal in place where $100 of each cabinet sold would go directly to the NBA. The original arcade version of NBA Jam features team rosters from the 1992-93 season, and the console versions use the 93-94 season. More up-to-date rosters were made available in subsequent ports of the game. However, there's probably one notable player absent from all versions of the game, and that is Michael Jordan. Midway was unable to secure the license to use his name or likeness, as Michael Jordan himself owns those rights and not the NBA. Shaquille O'Neal, who was in the arcade version as a member of Orlando Magic, was not in the home versions, as he went on to secure copyrights of his name and likeness as well.
And they wanted lots of money.
They wanted tons of money. And supposedly there is an official NBA Jam out there with Michael Jordan that was given specifically and solely to him. Unknown if that's
really?
true. But there are hacks out there.
That's a great urban legend.
There are hacks out there that have incorporated those players back into these games and created characters of Michael Jordan himself. So if you look out there online, bromhacking.net, you can find that. There were also 2 members of the NBA that passed away after the release of the arcade version, and they were subsequently removed from the home ports. One key feature of NBA Jam that sets it apart from other basketball sports titles was its exaggerated gameplay. Players could jump several times their height and could dunk from impossible distances from the hoop. There are no fouls, no free throws, really no rules other than being penalized for goaltending. Players are encouraged to actively foul their opponents by being able to swing your elbows from side to side, sometimes knocking players down, and individual players have stats as well. The game is filled to the brim with secrets and Easter eggs. There are a ton of hidden characters, and depending on the version you're playing, there are some additional secrets. One example is that the arcade version has a secret Battlezone Link tank game that can be played. Battlezone-like tank game.
Huh.
You know, speaking of like fouling and stuff, NBA Jam really is like the Blitz of the NBA series for games, isn't it?
That's a
Totally.
great comparison. And there's a lot of fascinating information on the development of this game. If anyone is interested, there's a 20-minute long interview with Mark Tamel on YouTube. You just search NBA Jam War Stories, and the video is titled How NBA Jam Became a $1 Billion Slam Dunk. In the video, he tells some very interesting stories about the pitching of the game to the NBA and the difficulties they had when digitizing the athletes in game, as well as some other great anecdotes. So some of those difficulties that they had was that they rented out a warehouse, painted it blue so that they could motion capture and video capture these. The players that they had were just people they picked up off the street and just paid for the day to play basketball.
They didn't
And,
even get like any like amateurs. They just got randos.
Random people off the street. And one of the difficulties they had was that when the uniforms came in, it was the same color that they had painted the walls. So they had to go by hand to rotoscope and cut out the players so that they could effectively digitize them.
What a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it must have been just a colossal effort, but they got it done. And the game was exceptionally popular, not just amongst sports fans, but also amongst players in the NBA themselves. When the game was released, Shaq purchased 2 cabinets, one for his home and another that traveled with him on the team playing 2 away games.
That's awesome.
Replay Magazine listed the game as America's top grossing arcade game of summer 1993. The game earned over $300 million. That's over $560 million when adjusting for inflation, with some machines earning up to $2,400 a week. And that's all in quarters. There's
Just a $500 million in quarters for a year.
Yeah, there's some conflicting information out there that says that the game earned over $1 billion in the first year. And a sequel was made and released in both arcades and the home console, known as NBA Jam Tournament Edition. The game had updated rosters, more Easter eggs, new music, and one major change was the addition of a 3rd player, though only 2 could be on the court at the same time. The Arcade 1-Up, a company that produces 3/4 size arcade cabinets, released an NBA Jam cabinet that has free online multiplayer where you can challenge other players on other cabinets. There's also
Cool.
there's also a Shaq edition with his personal logo of him hanging from the rim on the front of the cabinet, and it is larger than the other Arcade 1-Up cabinets. So that was a lot, and I think I'm going to conclude the history segment right there. That went on a little long, but I think that we covered a lot of this game's history. So we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss our own history with NBA Jam. saw this game in the arcades, and I can only remember playing a handful of times because I'm just not a sports guy, and basketball bored me to tears despite being able to rattle off the starting lineup of the Chicago Bulls. But I attribute that to living in Illinois at the time and the absolute insane level of marketing saturation that team had.
Well, and come on, and that team was also the best team of all time.
I mean, there was a lot of Bulls mania back in the mid '90s. I think that even if you were in the Midwest, you knew the entire Bulls roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris and I grew up in Illinois at that time, so
Oh yeah, you were right there with it.
yeah, everybody knew who Michael Jordan was, Grant, Pippen, everybody. You know,
And if we're talking about '93, like for us, that was what, 4th grade? Was that 4th grade for us?
3rd grade.
That was prime time for us to start getting into sports and start getting swept up by that stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is right before Rodman got on the team too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah, because he came in the later half of the '90s, I believe.
Because
Yeah.
he was
The mid
on
to later.
Detroit still playing
Yep.
for the Pistons. Yeah.
the worm.
And what drew me to play the game in the arcade was the over-the-top gameplay that I mentioned earlier. Seeing
Completely,
players
yeah.
dunk from the half court was just cool as hell. And it made it seem less of a sports game and more like a typical video game with sports elements. And
Yeah, I would agree with that.
yeah, and just playing the game was expensive as hell. It was 50 cents per quarter.
Yeah,
So-
that's why I didn't play the arcade a lot, because I mean I remember playing the arcade, but it was per quarter, and the quarters are so short.
Yeah, and if you wanted to play the full game, that's $2. And
Yeah,
I wasn't about to
oh,
spend $2 on a basketball game.
That's why they made $500,000 or $500 million in the first year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great marketing standpoint, but that was just not going to happen for me.
How long are they 2-minute quarters in this?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I'm not sure, I haven't tested this out, but I think the clock goes faster than a
I
second.
don't think it does. I think it runs normally.
Okay,
That's something that we could check and maybe
it flies
add on
by for me
afterwards.
because it's so exciting.
I have no idea how I came about this game, but I definitely owned it as a kid, and I can't remember if it was the tournament edition or not. I think I mentioned in an earlier podcast that I gave away my gaming systems when I was a teenager, but this game must have escaped that because I know for a fact this is the exact same cart I had, because when I was much younger, my mother bought these stickers that she made my brothers and I put on the backs of our games that this game belongs to.
Yes,
And
I had those too.
And, yeah, and I know that sounds insane, but that's just how it was, because if you
Well,
were a kid in the 90s, you were trading
You're
your
swapping,
games.
yeah.
Yeah.
And-
All
and
the
the-
time.
And actually, to make that sound less insane, I specifically remember you could get Kellogg cereals, and instead of like toys in there, they actually had the stickers for you to put on your games. So, property of
Oh
blank.
my God, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, they had little Zelda stickers and little Metroid stickers, and like that literally was, this game is property of blank.
Or if you were ghetto, your parents just wrote on it in black Sharpie without asking you.
No, Mom, no.
I hate that so much today as a collector.
Yes.
Like if you want to go ahead and write on the game itself, but writing over the label,
Yes.
you can't fix that.
Yeah.
No amount of rubbing alcohol or Goo Gone is
Yeah,
going
no
to
amount
get
of
that out.
acetone's gonna take that away.
Yeah, just ruining games for me 30 years later. And I don't have
60-year-olds.
I don't have a ton of memories of playing this game at home, and even fewer in the arcade, but one memory I do have of playing NBA Jam, and it might have been the tournament edition, again, I don't remember, but I had an older cousin named Cousin Jeffrey, and he was adamant that we played every time I saw him. And I don't know if this was because, or before I owned it or not, but he just absolutely destroyed me. I didn't enjoy playing it all because I lost nonstop.
Cousin
Yeah, and
Jeffrey was the guy that played it for like 3 hours every weekend.
Yeah,
when,
I think so.
He was like ready to go whenever someone else was around.
Because he was a big basketball fan and a big fan of video games in general. So it was already immediately clear that he played the hell out of this game. And I was just getting curb stomped every single time that we played. And I got a question for both of you guys. What team did you pick most often?
The Utah Jazz, baby.
The Jazz?
The mailman and the wall.
Okay, there is the mailman. Chris, I assume that we both played the Bulls.
Hornets.
The Hornets. Okay, so it was either
Or the Bulls.
for me or the Hornets. But the only reason I like the Hornets, and say whatever you want to say about this, but it's entirely because of the color scheme.
Yeah, completely.
Oh my God. Okay, thank you. So as a kid,
yeah.
I was like, oh, the Hornet looks cool. I think the colors look cool, and that was why I picked them because I don't know anything about sports. So
I think a lot of people enjoyed the Hornets because of the color scheme.
Well, I mean, but they were also a legit. Oh, okay, so back in the '90s, pretty much every team had at least one superstar or multiples, and the Hornets was one of those teams. Alonzo Mourning was amazing. Larry Johnson was
He
amazing.
had Hakeem Olajuwon, right?
No, Hakeem Olajuwon was on the Rockets.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yes, he was in Houston. All right.
But
I have
they
no
also
idea
had
who these people are.
They also had Muggsy Bogues, which if you watch the original Space Jam, he was the tiny little guy. Muggsy Bogues.
I do know Muggsy.
Yeah, like the Hornets
amazing player for especially because of his height.
Yeah, like the Hornets were like, and not to take away from other teams in the '90s. Like I said, like every team had at least one superstar.
I mean, most teams, the thing about basketball in the late 80s to mid 90s is that it was probably the most competitive league of all time. Like you had so many superstar players, and it was so competitive, even though you had names like Shaquille O'Neal and Michael Jordan and, Scottie Pippen and
the mailman,
Magic Johnson and
Scott
Karl Malone and John Stockton. You had all these players, and they were like on every team, so they were just all over the place. I mean, if you look at the all-time leaderboard still, like a lot of the names in this video game are still in the top 10 players of all time in some of these categories.
But
Cory, I'm so glad that you're on this episode because I could not flesh out any of those those players, because they're real people, because I don't know them. Like all I knew in the 90s was the Bulls, and that was it.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, like John Stockton, for example, who plays for the Jazz, he still has like the league record for assists and steals, and he's like in the top 5 for turnovers.
He's also one of the top point guards of all time.
Yeah, he's amazing. And then you had people like Larry Bird, and you had people like God, what's his name?
Well, Larry Bird was phasing out.
Well, Bird was phasing out by this point, but like I said, like late 80s to mid 90s, like you had so many amazing players. Like you had Hakeem Olajuwon, you had Kembe Mutombo, like just
Sean
there were
Kemp.
So many.
Clyde Drexler. Like every team had a household name.
Everybody,
and it wasn't just household
guys that you're just like, oh yes, I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, and it wasn't just, they weren't just household names for their town. Everybody knew Charles Barkley. Everybody knew Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah, I mean,
everybody knew Patrick Ewing.
Was excited to see like Reggie Miller play. Like it was
exactly. Yeah, every team had a superstar. Had a franchise player.
Like everyone wants to see Barkley playing Jordan. Like it's just a fun time for everyone.
Yeah,
I haven't heard some of these names in 25 years.
I know.
You know them all. That's the point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I did not know that I knew that many characters. I said it again, players, because every time you mention someone else, it just keeps coming up. I'm like, oh, I know who that is. I know who that is.
Yeah, you could probably name any team, and I can name at least one player from the 90s that played on that team.
The thing is that like half the people we've named, at least, like Clyde Drexler is still in the top 10 for steals. It's like I think Karl Malone still has like the most free throw attempts. Like these people are like, this is the era of the NBA Dream Team where we
Shaquille O'Neal still has the most free throw misses.
Exactly.
So talking about our memories of this game, did either of you ever use any of those cheat codes to play as those secret characters?
Well, this had Big Head mode, didn't it?
It sure did.
Yeah, I had Big Head mode all the time. because that was the best.
The characters I didn't really know about, and when I had this game, this was pre-internet, at least for me. Like, I remember, like, I knew the Clintons. You could play as Bill Clinton, and I knew you could play as all the mascots. That was pretty much all I knew.
You could play Larry Bird. I remember that one, and you could do Will Smith too, couldn't you?
So different versions,
Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff or what?
Different versions have different unlockable characters. So this was a midway game, and on the arcade port, you could play. I believe there was actually planned a Mortal Kombat arena at one point, but characters like Raiden and Scorpion were optional characters that you could play as through cheat codes.
Oh yeah. See, and as a kid, I never knew any of that stuff. And as a kid, also, I was not really familiar with how to put the cheat codes in, because in this game, it was actually kind of tricky putting the cheat codes in. I mean, some of them were easy by just like you just had to put there were multiple ways to put cheat. I mean, like there was like this.
A lot of it was the initials, like when you
So for some of them, you had to put in the initials, and that would give you a specific character. And then there were power-up codes that you could use. For example, being on fire, you'd press B. This is a Super Nintendo version. You press B 7 times, hold up plus Y plus B until tip off, and then you were always on fire.
Yeah, just super complicated ways of doing things.
Yeah, things you would not have found as a kid, but in Nintendo Power or Electronic Gaming Monthly, you're gonna find those codes there.
And I wish I would have had one of those.
I don't remember how I found out about these codes, but I think someone showed them to me. It might have been Jason Hahn that showed it to me.
Jason Hahn played this game?
Yeah, he played a lot of sports
games. Everybody played this game, man.
And that's just the thing of it. Like, I don't like basketball, but I played NBA Jam a ton as a kid.
And for me, honestly, like I played this a lot as a kid, and it's just because it's so easy to just do, like, it's so fun to just shit talk your friends, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just get in there, and it's a game of 2-on-2, and it's very simple controls, and the graphics are just like, you end up doing these crazy, like, 9-mile-in-the-air spin dunks, and you can constantly, like, knock your friends over and steal the ball, and it's just such a brutally competitive game, and it's just so simple to pick up that I think it's just a lot of fun to just go back and forth, and it's like you said, it's very short and it's simple to just get in there and do it. So I think it was just super popular for that reason. I mean, even though it cost you $2 to play it in the arcade, you could play 2 minutes of this before your movie started or whatever, and you could get in a quick 2-minute game with your friends and talk a lot of trash.
Well, and one thing that you mentioned earlier is the fact that, like, it was a sports game, but it also had the action and the cartooniness of other video games, and that was a perfect blend. Like, I started playing this. I had a friend who was a complete jock, and I used to go over to his house just to play this game. Whereas, like, back in the early 90s and stuff, jocks didn't really play video games, but they played this game. And for kids who weren't jocks but loved video games, they could also play this game. So it was a great melting pot of a player base. And I used to go over at his house just to beg him to play this game with me, or to let me play with him.
Well, may I ask who that friend was?
Michael Johnson.
That's exactly who I thought you were going to mention.
Yeah, he was new to Homer. I was new to Homer. And I used to go over. I used to just show up at his house and be like, "Can I play NBA Jam with you?"
My sports friend was Alan Miller.
Oh, yeah.
And he was the person that introduced me to Madden football on the Super Nintendo.
Well, and that's kind of the other thing I wanted to bring up is that, number one, I think this game came out like during peak basketball time when everyone was super hyped about basketball.
Absolutely, for sure.
Even if you were a casual viewer, like I said, we named off 24 names, and Sean recognizes all of them, right? So I think basketball is incredibly popular at this time. And then number two, this really didn't have too many competitors. Like, you had the Madden football, and you had like Tecmo Bowl and a bunch of other stuff. I can't remember too many other games.
Oh,
like,
no,
in the
there were-
early to mid '90s for
There
basketball.
were plenty of basketball ones, but
Were
they
there?
were
'Cause I
all
can't-
garbage.
They just weren't good. Exactly.
Yeah.
they were
There was also-
complete garbage. There
was
was
Barkley Shut Up and Jam. I don't
Yeah,
know
there's-
when that came out though, but
there was Barkley Shop and Jam. There was also Barkley versus wasn't there Barkley versus Jordan or Barkley versus somebody? I can't remember.
Michael Jordan in Flight or whatever it was.
Yeah, there were lots of basketball games, but they were just garbage, and the controls sucked, and they just didn't play well, and they were slow.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Is like they weren't like really good games. Like
Yeah.
you could play Tecmo Bowl and have a fun time. Like you could play Madden '95 and you could enjoy it. But like I couldn't recall any other basketball game that was worth my time.
no. Especially if you think about earlier than that, when you're talking about the NES era, we have Double Dribble, which is not
yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And it's even worse. This is just for anybody else out there. Double Dribble in America, the NES port, is even worse than the Famicom Disk System because the Famicom Disk System has music to it, whereas the NES has no music. It's just that do 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 of bouncing the basketball.
The occasional like crappy pixelated fan cheering.
Yeah, and something that we haven't even mentioned yet is just the outrageous enthusiasm from the announcer in this game. And that led to endless quotes at school and on the playground. And I'm
He's
sure,
on fire.
yeah, he's heating up from
Boom
downtown.
shakalaka.
Boom shakalaka. And hopefully we will get some of those sound clips put in here as we're talking about them. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those little announcements as you were getting, going on fire. And we'll discuss that probably in the next segment. But those things just really added to the game and added to the excitement of what you were playing. And I was nodding my head earlier to what you were talking about, Cory, with the simplicity of this game, how easy it is to just pick it up and play.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward title. You have like two buttons, so it was made for an arcade. So basically it was like we had to make this as simple as possible to just use a joystick and two buttons, basically.
3 buttons.
Okay, 3 buttons, whatever. But the point is that it was very straightforward play style, and using as few buttons as you had a very engaging and competitive title.
Yeah, there was turbo, pass, and shoot, I believe, is just all that you had or needed, really.
Yeah, but that's for offense. When you're on defense, it's turbo, push, and jump.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And jumping also would would do a block, and you can either while you're using turbo, if you hit the steel button, that would do the shove, and if you weren't using the turbo, you would just do the hand swipe.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. So, do either of you have
That's why
any
you were
more
losing all the time.
memories of this game?
Just the fact. I played this Michael Johnson's house, but then also this was one of the first Super Nintendo games. Like once I got my Super Nintendo, I don't even remember where I got it from. I got Tournament Edition, which if you can't remember which one you had, Tournament Edition, the ball was silver. Regular NBA Jam, the ball was orange.
Well, and you also had the extra players. That's how I
Right,
remember
yeah,
the Tournament Edition.
But yeah, I had Tournament Edition. I played the snot out of this game. Like this was one game. Like we all have our childhood games that we all played the snot out of, just because the fact that you only had 10 games total. But like this game, I never got bored of it, and this game blasted me for well into high school.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the reasons why you still had the Genesis hooked up even into the era of the
Exactly.
and the PS2 and stuff,
And the graphics were cool enough where they didn't, even playing it now, they don't feel like aged graphics. Like
they look fine. Like they're really well done, especially for the era.
So this game, Link to the Past and Street Fighter, never went out of rotation on my Super Nintendo.
Link to the Past for sure. And this game was also something I played with when other people came to my house because other people wanted to play this game. Like you were talking earlier, it's just one of those games that you can play a little bit, trash talk, and then go do something else.
It's just such an easy party game because the rounds are, 2 minutes long, and a game is 8 minutes at most if you're going to play the whole thing, and you can just switch off. It's just very simple, and there's so many teams that you can get enough variety in between players, and the matchups never really feel the same.
Hey, and can I ask you also about our childhoods here, kind of the chicken or the egg thing? Like, do you think the NBA, like, because you guys said like this came out at the perfect time when the NBA was blowing up, it had awesome players, kids were into it, adults were into it. Do you think this game helped the popularity of the NBA, or do you think the NBA helped the popularity of this game?
I think Midway capitalized on this one, honestly.
Okay.
I think the NBA was its own monster at this point without the help of this game.
I think it may have added some people that otherwise weren't really involved in the scene, but I agree. The NBA was its own thing, and it was its own. I don't know if it was a $1 billion company at the time. This is the early 90s.
I guarantee it was.
But I mean, but this game was a way for me outside of collecting basketball cards, which I also used to do. This was a way outside of that to actually feel like I was engaging with the NBA, and like besides just watching games and collecting cards, this was kept me engaged with the NBA and kept me interested and kept me
right. I mean,
feeling the action of it.
I will. Like, just to further on the NBA though. I mean, like I definitely had the Michael Jordan stopwatch. I had the Air Jordans. Like, I think that basketball was very prevalent outside of video games, certainly. And I don't think
that's true. That's true. I didn't even think about the fact that Air Jordans were one of the first pairs of shoes that I specifically remember having.
Yeah, you're like I need them.
Yeah, exactly. And that was when I was probably like 7.
Well, we also discussed offline starter jackets.
Yeah, too. And I remember like the team balls. You had especially if you went to like a Midway or something, like the state fair. Like you'd go and you'd play the dunk contest game or whatever, and you could win, and you'd get a ball with like the team colors on it and the logo, and everybody's trying to get that Hornets ball, like you were talking about.
I remember everybody walking around Six Flags or your county fair.
Yeah, exactly.
With a Bulls basketball or a Hornets basketball, and me just being so jealous that I couldn't win a basketball. But also, like you said, the starter jackets. Like for Sean and I, like at Heritage, everybody had a Bulls starter jacket, a Hornets starter jacket, or a Bears starter jacket. A pullover, puffy, awesome.
Yeah,
this was the era of like the NBA breakaway pants too,
Yep. And also, I would like to mention, when I lived in Homer, my mom let me decorate the room however I wanted. She was like, like, how do you want your room? I had a black and red carpet to represent the Bulls, and then the trim around the ceiling was turquoise and purple, and I had Charlotte Hornets decals, and I had a Charlotte Hornets / Chicago Bulls bedroom. Like I was a nut about this sort of stuff.
That visually sounds horrendous.
It was awful. It was so awful. Now, to be fair, the carpet, the black and red carpet was in there before I moved in. And I was like, no, keep it. That can be like the Chicago Bulls color. But I want the Charlotte Hornets on the wall. And I think I even had the little logos of the Charlotte Hornets around there. And then in my bedroom immediately after that one, I even had a ceiling fan that was the blades looked like gym floor, and the light was a basketball with a hoop and a net around it.
I don't think Sean and I went quite that hard into this.
The fan came with the decals for each team, so that way you could put your team decals on the blades. And I put all the teams on there. Oh, and the worst part about it, like I said, the bulb was a basketball. I didn't think this through because it made your entire room orange. Like it was like I took the basketball off real quick. But you got to keep in mind, Sean, like I played basketball as soon as I could, starting in 5th grade, all the way through high school. Yeah, like I was bad at it. I wanted to be. I was an unsuccessful jock wannabe. But yeah,
Well, you may not remember this, Chris, but
in the 90s,
I too was on the basketball team, quote unquote, in 5th grade. If you remember,
I remember 5th grade. Yeah, everybody was.
There was one game where we played the 6th graders as we were going from elementary to junior high, and we got completely dominated by them.
Right. The whole season, the whole basketball season was like a month long. It was basically just the school trying to find out who's interested in playing basketball.
Yeah.
We only had like 2 weeks worth of practices, and I sprained my wrist and had a cast on, so I missed the one game we had.
Oh, you missed that game. I don't remember it very well. I just remember just being out there and just getting dominated. But guys, I think that we were going to close up this segment, and we had a great discussion about our childhood memories of this game. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss replaying NBA Jam today in 2023. Stick around. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and lead this off with discussing what it's like to play NBA Jam today. And for me, to be very honest, it was kind of boring.
I was curious because I know how much you hate sports. And
I do.
I'm
not
playing
a sports fan.
Every time we were suggesting to play this game for one of the shows, you never even like bounced the idea off it. Like you were just silent.
Well, I did want to eventually cover this game, even though it's just something I've been dreading, because it's just not fun to me anymore. But playing this game, I resorted to my tactics that I used as a kid, and that is goaltending until I'm on fire, and then just lighting up the threes, rinse and repeat. Because when you goaltend, I should back up. So one of the game mechanics to be on fire is that you have to score 3 consecutive baskets
with the same player.
With the same player. So the easiest way to do that is to either foul the other player, steal the ball, and always dunk. Never shoot. Just do 3 dunks in a row, or you can goaltend. So when they shoot, you just catch the ball, you get goaltending, they get the points, but it doesn't count against you.
It doesn't stop your streak.
Exactly, in your streak. And once you have 3 consecutive baskets with the same player, you're now on fire and you can do ridiculous dunks. Your threes are almost guaranteed to land. And I believe after 3 shots of being on fire or 3 baskets, I think that you have to start all over again.
No, you go.
It's indefinite. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember, but the computer just cannot catch up once you do that. As soon as you get on fire and you start raining those threes, it is over.
Oh God! And what about the panic? Like if the computer gets on fire, panic sets in, and you are just frantic. You're blowing down your turbo bar trying to.
That's when you're just starting to try to check people into walls. Hopefully, you can just get something out of it.
Yeah, it's almost impossible. Once the computer does, it's game over. You just GG's, you're done.
That's when you play as dirty as you can. I mean, you play dirty the whole time, but then you just really pull out the trash.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time playing through, looking up the different players that you could play as, and just messing around, trying all those cheat codes out. And what really made this game fun for me, because once you know how to break the game by getting on fire, it's just not that much fun. But all of those secret characters really brought back those feelings I did as a kid, using cheat codes and having secret characters built into the game that's not DLC and stuff like that.
I don't even want to get off on a tangent on that one.
Yeah, when you say DLC, that just makes me angry on the inside.
I haven't replayed any of the recent iterations of NBA Jam, but I can only imagine that it would cost you extra after every season with all the roster updates.
Oh, of course.
They would have a season pass, unlock, earn a new character.
EA. God.
Yeah.
They would monetize the hell out of it and just ruin what was such a pure game. This game was just pure. It was so fun. It was easy. And it's something that I'm probably not going to play again, to be honest, but something that I really did enjoy at least picking it up again and replaying it today. What are you guys' thoughts?
I still love it. This is one of my go-to games whenever I bust out the SNES, and I remember when they came out the iPhone edition of this game. I can't remember what it's called, but I could look. But
EA Jam port for the iPhone Play Store by EA.
I heard about that, a month before it actually got released, and I set reminders. Like I downloaded it on day one and was playing it right away. I was showing all my friends at work. I'm like, check it out, and like I am still a huge fan of NBA Jam. I will still play this anytime anybody wants to play NBA Jam. I'm down for it. If my wife was a huge Scottie Pippen fan, so I was really trying to convince her to play with me. She does not play video games, but I almost had her on the hook for this one, but Mario Party had us distracted.
That'll do it.
But I still love this game with all my heart. I really recommend. I mean, if you want a fun, goofy sports game for Super Nintendo that holds up very well today, this is definitely it. And I should say, like, if you have a chance, like if you're looking between the two cards for the NBA Jam and Tournament Edition, just go with the Tournament Edition because it's pretty much the same, but just better. Yeah. Oh, and speaking of Tournament Edition, one thing I never really messed around with a lot as a kid were the bonuses, because I should say, like, this game was actually a challenge, like because a lot of the ways that you unlock the special characters and stuff was also to you have to beat every team, all 27 teams, and the game kind of had a season mode where you picked one team and then you try to play your whole season, and it was challenging. Like I'm sure playing people had flawless seasons, but I never did, because it was not an easy game to win them all, even if you are trying to cheese with getting
like
on fire.
You said, as soon as the computer gets the edge, it becomes a very hard thing to deal with.
Yeah, if you get 10 points behind, that's hard to get back from. But when I was playing it this time, I did go into the settings and turn on the bonus point shots and the little power up things that are only on the Tournament Edition. So, like, there's a power up where if you run over it, there's like these just little spinning discs that only stick around for a few seconds before they disappear. But one of them gives you like unlimited turbo. One of them gives you super awesome ball handling skills. Another one gives you a guaranteed 3-point shot. Another one gives you like super dunk skills for 5 seconds. And another one knocks everybody on the court down. But yeah, like, I turned that stuff on just to kind of make it chaotic and fun and change it up from when I was a kid a little bit. What about you, Cory?
I mean, yeah, I went ahead and played through and had myself a grand old time.
Are you still the Jazz?
This is not something that I'm going to be picking up, just to play, because I have plenty of other crap to occupy my time with in this day and age. But NBA Jam is still NBA Jam. It's a lot of fun. It's very reminiscent of, mid-90s playing video games at home with the family. And as I mentioned, this is like one of those things where you could get a lot of, smack talking in. And, tangentially, I will say that, Blitz 2000, my brother will still not play it with me because of how aggressively rude I am as a player.
Oh, did your brother play NBA Jam too?
Yeah, he did. I don't think he played it as much as I did, but just he wouldn't play these sorts of games because they don't really foul you, and I am not a nice person when it comes to being able to just play very aggressively.
I'm the same way.
You can definitely play underhanded.
Yeah, and he's very purist, where he's like, you got to play the game right. It's like, no, I'm going to play it in the most horrible way possible because I'm a terrible person.
Yeah,
and
I'm the
so,
same way.
For example, like in Blitz, going off topic here, you can run into people before they catch the ball. So he would always go for very long plays, and I would just knock the guy down out in the field.
Where's the pass interference?
Yeah, exactly. There's no pass interference because it's Blitz. So he never got any distance, and I would just play a running game and win. So that's the little off-topic conversation. But in terms of NBA Jam, like you could just run into people and slap the ball out of their hands.
I start
very
fouling them
aggressive.
as soon as they pass the
Yeah,
ball
and you
in
could just
bounds.
foul people constantly, and that's how I would play because that's how you win. And
Yeah.
he did not enjoy that, so that's very brought back those memories of me playing as a child when I ran through this in my modern playthrough.
Now, did playing this make you want to go back and watch Mighty Ducks 2?
No, it did
No.
not. I don't know why.
For some reason, like the NBA Jam and Mighty Ducks 2 go hand in hand. I don't know.
Explain that to me.
90s sports. I don't know. I used to love. I used to love.
The only corollary you have.
Yes, 90s sports. I used to love Mighty Ducks 2.
I want to point out that in the Donkey Kong Country 2 episode, I mentioned that one of those levels reminded me of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah.
And you laughed at me.
Here we are with a man playing a basketball game thinking of a 90s hockey film.
Yeah, Emilio Estevez.
That still holds up.
Doing?
It is knuckle puck time.
Quack, quack, quack. All right, I'm done.
Oh my
God.
I
mean, NBA Jam, it's still NBA Jam. Like it's still the same mechanics and it still holds up in time. And it's not that I would say that it's something you should go out of your way to play, but if for some reason it comes up and you can spend, 10 minutes screwing around with it, like it's worth the time.
So like I said earlier to everybody out there, this section is going to be very small because there's just not a ton to this game. But unless you guys have anything else, I think I'm going to end this on a kind of an interesting note, and then we'll move into our final segment if you guys don't have anything else to go off.
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Like I mentioned earlier, Mark Jamel, who was one of the game programmers, I think he's one of the developers, might have been the producer as well. He happens to be a native of Michigan. And in that video that I mentioned earlier, that War Stories video, he admits that as a Detroit Pistons fan, that he put in code that if the Bulls were taking a last-second shot against the Pistons, it would always miss.
That is great.
So he kept this secret for decades before he admitted that he messed with the game to ensure that his Pistons would always come out on top against the Bulls in a last-second showdown for a shot.
I mean, that is really funny.
That is awesome.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But that happened guaranteed to some kid out there. It's just like, what the heck? Like, this is so unfair.
Oh, I mean, if you're talking about, you said it was what, $300 million that this game made in the first year before adjustment for inflation.
Quite a bit of money. I don't remember
so
exactly.
You're talking about like 1.2 billion games, basically, if you're talking about quarters. So yeah, you look at it, and there's probably at least a couple 100,000 times that happened.
Yeah.
Terrible. So let's take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to give off our final thoughts, which we've already kind of done, but we also are going to announce our winner for the drawing of Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. All right, welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment. Here's our final thoughts. Like I said, we already discussed some of them, but I'm going to go ahead and start off with mine. I haven't played the latest iteration of NBA Jam. Like I mentioned earlier, they came out in 2010 or 2011, and Chris mentioned one for the iOS, but I don't really see where they can shake up the formula that makes it any different than it was in 1993.
Oh, the iOS one is the exact same.
Yeah.
I mean, the polished graphics and everything, but it's the exact same.
Sure. There's that. But the game was pretty bare bones looking back on it. But at the time, I had a ton of fun with all the secrets that it had and just being able to play as my favorite players of the day.
Except for Michael Jordan.
Which is
And I remember Yeah, I remember, like, it was an urban legend that, like, everybody thought there was a code to unlock Michael Jordan. Like, and
Yeah.
I pretty much any conversation I had with anybody, like, anytime this game came up in conversation, we always asked each other, "Do you know the code to unlock Michael Jordan?" Like, that always came up.
Thinking back on it now, there might have been an April Fool's joke from one of the various video game retail magazines out there that put him in. I could be pulling that out of my butt, but I think that did exist. As far as this game goes, am I going to replay this in the future? Very, very unlikely. But I'm always going to have some fond memories of this game, and it's basketball of all things. So, Cory, what are your thoughts?
Same thing. It's a really fun game, and I enjoy it, and I won't be going out of my way to play it. So there you go.
Short, Chris.
I'll still play it. I'll still, every time I fire up the SNES, I'll still throw it on every once in a while and still love it. And I still love it a lot. And yeah, and actually, and now that you mentioned like the whole ROM hacks thing with versions with Jordan, I'll probably throw those on and play with those a little bit. Like, I love how simple and clean and goofy, and the announcer is fantastic. And I love absolutely everything about this game.
Who was the announcer? It wasn't Costas.
I don't recall who it was, but I just saw a video. Was it Chris?
Yeah,
Did you send that video?
Yeah, I have the link. It's probably like if you throw up the Discord and scroll up a couple pages, it's
Tim
got his name
Kitzrow
right there.
was the one that did it.
And he did a fantastic job. I can't like was Boom Shakalaka? Did he invent that, or is that a thing before?
I don't know. He very well may
too.
have. Did he?
Yep.
What
he
did you say?
Did Blitz and MLB Slugfest, and I think he did Gretzky. Wow. He's done a lot of stuff. There you go.
He's awesome. He's forever a hero.
I think that wraps up our final thoughts. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of the episode, for those of you that stuck around, we're going to announce the winner of the giveaway that we did last month. It was our holiday giveaway, and we actually got a lot more traffic than we normally do, especially on the YouTube video, which I do the YouTube videos just for people that don't want to download any podcast software. So we get less than a dozen views on those things. But this one got well over 100, which was shocking to me. So I've got everybody's name in a Excel spreadsheet, just 1 through whatever. And I'm on Google random number generator and generate.
And it's Patrick Ewing. Congratulations to Patrick Ewing for winning Shovel Knight.
No, it's Shaquille O'Neal.
Our winner is Atma, also known as @BigBoySlip on Twitter. Congratulations. I'm going to contact you directly so you can get your code. Thank you very much for participating, and thank you all to everyone that did. I've also I've also mailed out the magnets for the 5 first people that stuck around and started joining in on our Discord, our Twitter, the YouTube, making those comments. So I'm going to do that again. If you want a magnet for the show, I've got 5. The first 5 people that contact me, however you contact me, whether it's on Discord, Twitter, or YouTube, hit me up and I will send out a magnet. I will also send out a sticker of our logo as well. I just had some of those made, and so you will get something that not even Chris or Cory has yet.
What?
But I am gonna get one, right?
You guys will get them. Yes, I just haven't sent those out.
I put stickers on everything.
Okay, you just contact me after the show and just make sure that I got your address, which I think I do. And let's talk about our next episode. So we are going to be covering 2 games next episode, and it's going to be a double. It's going to be Disney's Aladdin for the Sega Genesis and for the Super Nintendo.
Was I supposed to be playing both of them, or
play either? I don't care. It's up to you. I'm going to be playing both.
Yeah, I'm working on both. I'm doing side-by-side comparison. Or not side-by-side, one and then the other.
That's what I'm trying to do.
And side-by-side.
As of this recording, the Disney classic games Aladdin and the Lion King is available on the Nintendo Switch eShop for 50% off. So it's only $10 US. Again, this is the North American eShop.
Is this before they take down the eShop?
This is for the Switch. So the eShop going down for the Wii U and 3DS is going to happen in March.
Oh, man. That's coming up soon.
But for this sale lasts until January 16th. So it's only a little more than a week as of this recording. Pick it up and play along with us, and when you hear from us again, we'll be discussing Disney's Aladdin for both the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Until then,
A whole new world.
Chris and Cory, thank you both for kicking off the new year with me and this episode. You, the listener out there, thank you for continuing to join us on this crazy ride.
Well, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you.